Hi everyone. The topic of my presentation today is talking about diabetes with young people and their families. As Damien mentioned, I'm a diabetes educator and I work in the acute sector at Royal Darwin Hospital, and I work with a small team of diabetes educators. We have an Aboriginal health practitioner, we have a diabetes nurse practitioner, and we work alongside dietitians and of course Angela Titmus, our paediatric endocrinologist. I am really interested in diabetes in young people, especially improving quality of life. So today I'll touch on education tips for young people and their families. I'll talk a little bit about diabetes stigma, the resources that we here at RDH use. I'll go through how I actually talk about what diabetes is, some goals of care, and finally some key advice from young people with diabetes to healthcare professionals. Just to follow up on Angela's presentation last week, in comparison to later onset diabetes, youth diabetes, which is defined as diagnosis before the age of 25, progresses more rapidly. It's associated with more comorbidities, worsens pre-existing morbidities, and microvascular and macrovascular complications appear earlier and are more severe. Before I get started, I would just like to reiterate how important it is to take a person before business approach. It's really important to introduce yourself in a warm and friendly way. Try not to use complex words and explain why you need to ask questions. Take a discreet approach and avoid discussions in open or public spaces. Building trust and rapport really helps a young person and their family to feel safe and comfortable, especially with you in their space. Find common ground such as sports or fishing. My go-to is fishing because I love it so much and I can usually rattle off a few funny fishing stories about my weekend adventures. Always ask the young person and their family if they would like an interpreter, because it's really important to clarify if they have understood the meaning of your words or questions and that you have understood their answers. Diabetes stigma. Diabetes can make kids feel really different from their friends, classmates, and family members, and shame can act as a big barrier to getting help. It can be overwhelming and disempowering. Kids who don't know other people with diabetes might feel isolated or alone. There may be denial because they want to be like other kids, and they can sometimes pretend that they don't have diabetes. Education about diabetes and the best way to manage it can help to put their mind at ease. Share the responsibilities of caring in a whole of family approach. Reinforce that it's not their fault and that many risk factors, including genetics and family history, can influence a person's risk of developing diabetes. A study led by Emma Weaver, exploring the experiences of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people between the ages of 10 to 25 years living with type 2 diabetes in Northern and Central Australia, really highlighted three major things. The first was that young people experience a normalisation shame response to their diagnosis, partly related to the fact that they think that everyone has diabetes, so what, it's just another thing, as well as the fear that they may be judged by their friends, as typically diabetes is an old person's disease. It also showed that there was little understanding of what diabetes actually is. They expressed that they just need someone to explain it to them a bit more. Lastly, it was evident that young people with diabetes experience multiple barriers to managing their diabetes, including complex lives, multiple illnesses, and the availability of support. Young people often admit that they are okay with the tablets, but they get sick of having to do the insulin injections. But adherence to medication was greatly influenced by family support. So the study showed that receiving appropriate supports was important to young people's diabetes management, and that included family and health professionals. Peer support groups were mentioned and were thought to provide motivation to young people. As one young girl said, it would be really good to hear their side of the story and how they got it and what they are doing about it, because it's hard to talk to other people. It's hard to lose weight. You'd be more motivated to do it. This is what young people are telling us, so we really need to listen so that we know how to approach it. Some education tips from me is just to really take the time and invest in the young person. It is really, really hard with time pressures, but it can make all the difference. Let them know that you're not going to go away and that you will be there to provide support. For patients admitted to RDH for intensive diabetes education, we tailor it to short education sessions, sometimes multiple times a day, especially if they're starting on insulin at meal times. If they're not in the hospital, it's beneficial to see them daily as an outpatient to build on education, knowledge, and understanding. If a new diagnosis, the child and family should receive individualised diabetes self-management education that is developmentally appropriate, culturally sensitive, and promotes family-centred behavioural change. It's important to try to have a good positive introduction to diabetes and its management right from the very start, eliminating any myths that they might have. Find common ground and motivators. Sports is often a big motivator. Once they are feeling better and their glucose levels have normalised, they are often even better at sports than they were before. It's important to be aware of competing priorities that might be important to them, such as other health issues like rheumatic heart disease or other sick family members, because they don't want to burden their families. Identify key family supports. It's so important for family members or close friends to be included. The young person should never feel alone and have to manage by themselves. They need support from the right people close to them that can help them to follow up with their treatment and lifestyle changes. There was a young boy admitted to RDH earlier in the year, and his escort was someone from another community. The escort didn't even live with this young boy, so how can any of the education and information be filtered back and put into practice? We ended up conducting multiple education sessions over FaceTime with his mum and auntie back in community. Finally, staying positive, calm, and gentle are just some of the key messages from young people with diabetes to healthcare professionals, as highlighted in Emma's paper. Resources, unfortunately, there are limited age and culturally appropriate resources available, as I'm sure you all know. We use a combination of the Diabetes Australia Flipcharts, the Good Food for Diabetes booklet, Angela's Broom and Mop analogy, and we also show Menzies videos of young people with diabetes. I'll talk through these on the following slides. I also just wanted to mention Feltman. Feltman is an education tool that's used to explain diabetes and what happens in the body, but there is only a felt man and a felt mum. So again, it's not really appropriate for children. However, it can be good and can be used for adolescents and young adults. Children's Health Queensland Hospital use Good Start resources. Some of you may have seen them. They're co-designed and culturally tailored resources for Maori and Pacific Islander families and communities. So the Diabetes Australia Flipcharts, developed in 2003, there's a whole series, but we generally tend to use the first two, which is Diabetes, What Is It? And Diabetes, How Do You Feel? They're designed for adults, but we flip to the pages showing how glucose is broken down and how it goes into the muscles and body cells to be used for energy. However, they are outdated and not age appropriate. The Good Food for Diabetes booklet is a great resource that we use all the time for both children and adults. It has lots of great pictures and is easy to read. There's a good picture that I use to explain about diabetes, glucose and insulin, and I'll talk more about that on the next slide. So the way that I talk about diabetes with young people and their families, I kind of use, depending on their age, I use a combination of both the flip charts and the Good Food for Diabetes booklet. And I talk through the pictures and I explain what diabetes is. I explain that when you eat food, the food and drink goes into your tummy where it gets broken down into glucose or sugar. The glucose then goes into your blood. We only need a little bit of glucose in our blood, and having too much can make us sick. We have to get rid of the extra sugar in the blood using insulin. Insulin is made in the pancreas, which is a body part near your tummy. Insulin helps to move blood glucose into the muscles and gives you energy and makes you feel strong. When you have diabetes, your insulin does not work very well. Sometimes the pancreas is worn out and does not make enough insulin. This means that too much glucose or sugar stays in the body. Some people call diabetes sugar sickness. I then explain about the symptoms of diabetes and I ask if and what they have experienced, things like being really thirsty, going to the toilet a lot, feeling tired, tingly toes, blurry vision, or boils or sores on their body. I always ask and check for acanthosis nigricans, And acanthosis is a skin condition typically seen in young overweight children with type 2 diabetes. It's mainly seen in the neck, armpits and groin, and it can be a real shame job for the kids, and they try to cover it up with their hoodies. I explained that it often gets better and fades once they start diabetes treatment, and that seems to be a big motivator, especially for girls. And it's always important to ask about contraception and to discuss safe sex. So when I talk about the broom and mop analogy, this is something that Angela's picked up on her travels, her outreach travels in various communities, and she's picked up bits and pieces here and there, and it's kind of evolved into this spiel. But it's a great way to build on diabetes knowledge. So we ask them to imagine that the room around them is full of rubbish, and we ask them how they would clean it up. They usually say with a broom. I then say, what if it's still dirty? What would you do then? And they usually say use a mop. I then ask them what they would use with the mop if it was still hard to get clean, and they'd say soap or Pine-A-Clean. I would ask if you would be able to see the rubbish if you were on the other side of the door, and they say no. I then say that the rubbish that you can't see, but that will make you sick if you don't clean it up, is like sugar in our body in diabetes. You can't see it. So the broom, mop or soap is, depending on what they're being treated with, the daily exercise, metformin or insulin. I say that sometimes we need lots of things to clean up the sugar. And I then ask them what they would do if we tipped the rubbish bin out all over the floor after they'd cleaned it up. And they usually say get really mad or angry. And I explain that the rubbish bin is like drinking soft drink or fruit juice. It undoes all the good work of the broom, mop and soap. We also ask them what a table would feel like if they dropped Coke or Sprite on it. They usually say sticky. So we talk about how our blood becomes sticky like that in diabetes, and that's what causes problems in the kidneys, eyes, heart and brain. But if we keep sugars between 4 and 8, then the blood will not be sticky and hopefully not get any of those problems. So kind of soft drinks is a really big and important discussion to have, and visual aids and resources like this one show just how much sugar is in soft drinks. It's a really good way to have a discussion around trying to eliminate sugar sweetened beverages. And I explain that soft drinks can fill kids up so that they don't eat healthy meals. They can also lead to tooth decay and weight gain. Water is always best because it helps to digest food, absorb nutrients and get rid of waste from the body. If they're really reluctant, we talk about trying zero sugar drinks or watering down juices. I also talk a lot about the importance of families eating together, lots of veggies, bush tucker, stews with veggies, changing to brown bread, lots of variety. And also just how important it is to get dietitian input when and if you can. I know that there's another session a bit later on about nutritional strategies, so it'd be good to hear that. The Diabetes Across the Life Course Partnership have developed videos showing clips of young people with diabetes and their families. This can help with mental health and stigma. It shows that they are not alone and that other people are going through this that have diabetes as well. If we get time later on, I can show LJ's video of his experiences of living with diabetes and who has helped him along the way. And the times that we have shown these videos to young people, they've been really fixated and have seemed to really connect with what the young people in the videos are saying. So they're really powerful tool. Try to acknowledge feelings and emotions. I say that you might feel angry that you have it, but also sad. I explain that it's good to talk to someone that you can trust about how you are feeling and not to bottle things up. You may feel shame telling people at first, and it might be easier to tell just a couple of your close friends or family members. Sometimes other people don't understand at first, but once you explain what it is, they will usually try to help you and be more understanding. Goals of care and follow-ups are success in maintaining lifestyle self-care changes and reaching therapeutic goals involves initial and regular diabetes self-management education. It is not a case of educate once and then leave them to it. It should include collaborative goal setting for diet, activity, blood glucose monitoring, and medications. It's really important to discuss goals that are important to the young person, not just what's important to us. Whether that may be to be more active, to cut down on soft drink, or maybe getting school to help with medicines. It's important to always provide positive reinforcement of goals achieved and avoid blame for failure. And of course, education, when possible, should be facilitated by a team approach, including a dietitian and social work. I know that's not always possible, but social work input is really helpful for families with financial stresses, food insecurity, housing instability, family dysfunction, and low parental support. So some key advice, this is coming straight from young people with diabetes to health professionals, as highlighted in Emma Weaver's paper, is to keep engaging, frequent contact and support, find common ground and motivators, stay positive, identify supports involving family, links to other young people, explain in simple language and in ways that are relevant, stay calm and gentle and show you care. Always try to have consistent messaging between the teams and collaborating with other services. Again, I just wanted to say it's really important to try and involve the whole family and focus on empowering strategies. Focus on aspects that a young person can control and explain that the diabetes story of other people is not necessarily their future story. So building relationships with schools, the workplace, sports teams, Aboriginal community health services such as Worley, Danila Dilwar, Clontarf, as these can really make a difference in the level of support that is provided to the young person. I know that there's another session later on about collaboration and thinking beyond the healthcare sector that would be really interesting to hear. And that's the end of my presentation, but I can show LJ's video if anyone would like to see it. And there's also a case study as well.
Thanks, Liz. That was brilliant. Okay, now I'll just welcome Angela and Peggy as well to unmute themselves and bring on the video. Okay, and we've got some time for questions now. So similar to what I described at the start, I'd encourage participants, even if you don't have a question, just putting in, I guess, having a look at the question section so you can upvote that. We've already got one in here that says, yes, please show the video and the case study. So please, guys, if you do want to see the video and the case study, upvote that and we'll do that at the end. Can I check, Liz? Oh, wow, yeah, okay. Lots of people want to see the video and the case study. Can I check, Liz, how much time would you need to do the video and the case study? You're just on mute, Liz, so I didn't hear that.
Sorry, 10 minutes.
10 minutes, sure. Well, I'll be sure to leave time for that. So we'll have a question and answer time here, and I'd encourage, obviously we've got Peggy, welcome, great to have you here. So as I gave you a bit of an introduction at the start, Peggy, I'm not sure if you were there, but you're obviously one of our team members here with our youth type 2 diabetes team, living in the NT, also living with type 2 diabetes. And I think it'd be really interesting for our viewers here to, I guess, hear some of your perspectives on what you know, young people are wanting, if you can, I guess, talk a little bit more generally there too, because a lot of us are, I guess, older and perhaps a little bit out of touch with some of those things. And then Angela, obviously great to have you here for the discussion as well. So I would welcome people to, start putting in their questions. And we've got one here, so let me have a look. Okay, so we've got a question here that says, thank you for your presentation, it was really helpful. I just want to ask if you could tell us how you approach a particularly despondent young person. So I might start with you for that one, Liz, and then pass that around.
Not uncommon.
Yep.
We do get lots of young people who are quite despondent at first, but I guess just as I mentioned, just to let them know that you're not going to go away, that you're going to be there and you're going to, you know, help them along their journey. we are lucky enough to have an Aboriginal health practitioner work in our team also. So sometimes we would use her services, maybe getting the family involved, or if there's a close friend that they can trust to maybe, you know, include in the conversations as well.
Thanks, Liz. Angela, did you want to comment here?
Sorry, with the despondent young people, it's a real challenge. We know that a lot of young people with type 2 diabetes have poor mental health. It increases your risk of getting diabetes, but then it also makes the management really difficult. And so it's really trying to work out, often far beyond how we can improve. And I know that there's some Aboriginal community controlled health services that are on this webinar today that do a great job in actually really working on just fundamental support of a young person and then get on to the diabetes. So like really working on re-establishing connection to school, re-establishing connection to community organisations, dealing with food security, linking into wellbeing services to deal with trauma and other issues. And then you can actually have a space where you can actually then approach looking at type 2 diabetes. But it's very hard to do any of that unless you've actually addressed the basic necessities of a young person's life.
And Peggy, what do you think?
What was the question again?
So the question related, like if you got a young person that's maybe disengaged, not particularly interested in their care at that time, what would you say about that, and how do you think health professionals can best approach people that are in that space?
I would say the first approach would probably be not approaching them as a health professional, but as a friend maybe. I think that was one of the experiences that I had when I was growing up. I did that with Liz, who knew my mum for a long time, and I considered her as my friend. So yeah.
Yeah. So kind of on what Liz was saying, like building that relationship first, you're feeling that's an important thing?
Yeah. Because you may never know what kind of environment they were actually growing up in and those kind of stuff. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So I've got a question here that says, can you tell me about how you use Feltman, and have you adapted this from the original? So Liz, I might get you to comment on that.
Yeah, we don't use it that often, to be honest, only because it can be a little bit scary. They're quite large, the Feltman and Feltmum that we have, but it's very interactive. So it's great because it just has little Velcro bits and pieces that comes with it. So you can really explain, you know, the lock and key, how insulin works and how glucose is, you know, released into the muscles and cells. So it's probably, it takes a little while, but it's really handy to use as a hands-on interactive experience. But we do mostly use it for young adults rather than smaller young children.
Yep. Okay. Angela, any comments there?
No. Yeah, Liz is the expert on Feltman.
Yeah. And Peggy, have you ever seen someone use Feltman? Do you know what we're talking about?
No, I've never actually used Feltman or heard of it actually, so this is my first time hearing of it.
No problem.
There's great YouTube videos on how to use Feltman that you can use as a guide if you're keen to try them. Yeah.
And I'm going to add to this too. Brent Lyon, who's on the call today, is an exercise physiologist over at the First Nations Health Unit for Diabetes Queensland. I know that they've done an adaptation of Feltman that actually uses magnets. I believe, and Trent, I know you can't correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that this was adapted with people up in the Torres Strait, and it's fantastic resources that's been culturally adapted. And I've seen him do it with kids that are 15, 16, and it was fantastic. So perhaps if people are interested, they could get in touch with Diabetes Queensland about that. Okay. So we've got a bit here about loving the mop and broom analogy. We'll be stealing that. No copyright problems there, I assume. Okay, Feltman's done. Okay, so we've got a question here. The question is, interested in knowing how these materials are adapted for those with poor literacy levels. Also interested in educational materials for parents. So any comments there?
Yes, like I mentioned before, there's not great, education resources out there that are age appropriate and culturally appropriate, but those Good Start, the Queensland Children's Health Good Start resources are really low literacy level, and they're really great to use for young people. They've got like a really cool little chart that the kids can tick each day what they've done, or what they're working towards with their goals. So they're probably good to look at. But yeah, there's not too many things out there. So it's generally the Flipcharts and the Good Food for Diabetes booklet that we use. And then, just a lot of talking around that, but we do need more resources that we can provide to people.
Angela, any comments there?
No, I think it's an area that everybody knows that we need more multimedia kind of resources, and also resources in different languages as well, to really help with that. But I think, yeah, physical things help. I know in Central Australia, I've seen some kind of models that have been made that show kind of what happens to the blood when it's got glucose in it. And I think they work really well to be able to show people kind of physically. And that's why, when I'm kind of doing outreach, tend to talk about the broom and the mop, because it kind of overcomes literacy issues, and it kind of gets adapted to the local terminology. So yeah.
And what do you think, Peggy? What can we do for people who maybe reading and writing isn't their thing? How can we explain type 2 diabetes?
I would say probably just like Liz mentioned, using the flip charts, like maybe getting an updated one that's more focused on youth. They could be like adults and youth. So I think maybe getting like flip charts or like picture cards, something like that could actually help them with it. And if you may never know, you might be giving them learning literacy lessons while you're in the interview with while you're sitting in with the health professionals and all. So yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, I'm going to come back to you again now and say, one of the questions we've got here, so what do you think the things that young people need or want to know about diabetes? So what's really important for young people to know, do you think?
I think it's more has to do with intergenerational diabetes. As you like when I was growing up, none of now more kids that used to be my age are getting diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I think that's more to do with intergenerational diabetes and how they can learn from it. Like, what are the things that they need to know about getting diabetes before getting diabetes? I think for me, it's more like the intergenerational part. And sometimes it can be, there's not enough awareness around type 2 diabetes, especially in youth. It's more in adults, and you don't see that every day. So yeah, I think it has to do with more educational resources for them. So yeah, I think that's what they most likely want to know about diabetes. It's the only way they know how to know diabetes is through educational resources, especially if they're school-aged kids and coming out of high school and all. So yeah.
Thanks, Peggy. Angela, have you got any thoughts here on what are some of the things, I guess, as a clinician you'd love young people to know?
Actually, I'm going to turn the question back to Peggy and just saying, what did you wish that you had been told when you first got diabetes, Peggy?
I think you'd have to be looking for the signs earlier than late, because and also learning what it could lead if it's not managed. I've actually learned that the hard way with my mom and grandfather, that it could lead to sitting on dialysis, or it could be leading to heart problems. And I think it's more like, what's the negative side of diabetes? I think that's one of the things I wish I knew earlier. I just only learned the positive side, saying, oh, you can't, I've been told false information that I needed. I think I've been told false information saying that I'm not going to get dialysis, but then learning that along the way to now, I think it's more like leaning to negative experiences about having diabetes. So yeah.
Thanks, Peggy. Liz, have you got anything to comment or add here?
No, I think it's important not to scare the young person, but I think that they also need to know, from the get-go. It's just that delivery and how you give the young person that information, and knowing that it is, it can be managed, and that, your life will change a little bit, but you can still do everything that you want to do. You just have to take a few more steps to do it. I think that there's a big place for schools. I don't think that, Peggy said there's not enough awareness. I think it's getting better, but I think we also need to get into the schools a lot more and provide more education to schools. I know that they've got a program for type 1 diabetes in schools that has been really, really successful. But the management of type 1 and type 2 diabetes is quite different. But I think just to help that stigma, shame, awareness, everything, I think that we need to get into the schools.
Yeah, I guess leads nicely onto another question that's been upvoted around asking about health promotion and prevention of diabetes, and just asking if you can see a place for primary care nurses and diabetes educators going to schools regularly for workshops with all ages. Got any thoughts there, Liz?
Yeah, no, exactly what I said. I think that there's so many schools have so much potential to really make a difference, and they do help out a lot with a lot of our young children and helping them to get their medicines and food and everything. But I think that there's a big gap for diabetes education, and that could be something that's really powerful. And just like I said, to eliminate that stigma and shame around it, so that people know the facts.
Angela, anything to add?
No, I think schools are really, really key, and thinking, youth workers and things as well, like if there's Clontarf or the STARS program, or there's lots of community organisations that may have the best connection to young people and can help. Can I just, ask another question of Peggy? Is that okay? Yeah. I just wanted to ask Peggy, if you could kind of share from yourself and from young people that you've heard within the project, what it is that people get worried about with diabetes when they hear that word or hear that they've been diagnosed with it.
I think it has more to do with the schooling, because most of our we've only got like a couple of participants in the project, and most of them have told me, the young people have told me that it's mainly to do with school. They're worried about the shame, like sharing it around with their friends who doesn't understand diabetes. I think it's mainly has to do with they said that it's their school and sometimes their community. It depends on where they're living. I think that's one of the main things that they've also been worried about. They're worried about more like how people are going to see them differently, just because they got diabetes, and they probably heard myths about, oh yeah, diabetes doesn't let you have fun and you can't hang with us. And I think that was one of the things that I went through as well, along the other young people that I've talked to in the project as well. So yeah.
Okay. And I'll just note here, Eric Barkmeyer from Diabetes Queensland's just let us know that that magnetic tool that I was referring to, that was developed after a diabetes education in schools program. Was conducted with funding from the Office of the Commonwealth Games, with 120 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students getting input into that. I had a look at the third iteration of that, and once endorsed, they'll definitely work with us to get that out there with some feedback from young people. And Trent Lyons kindly put some of his contact details in there if people are interested in hearing a little bit more about that resource. Okay, now there's a question here, and I might pass it to you first, Angela. It says, when you discuss managing diabetes, do you place a continuing emphasis on weight loss?
I suppose it depends a little bit on the age. If there's a young person, like a child, we don't talk about weight loss at all. We actually talk about weight maintenance as their height increases. So I aim to keep their weight stable for 1 year or 2 years. As their height increases, so that kind of BMI will normalize or reduce over time. And we kind of, I don't mention what the weight is or kilos like that. And we just kind of talk about weight maintenance and the strategies we can do to try to keep the weight the same so they kind of grow into their body, I suppose. While there are some older young people, and it really depends on, we see quite different variety of phenotypes as well in the Northern Territory of young people and different risks. There's some young people that obviously weight has impacted on lots of aspects of their lives. So they have multiple metabolic complications, or like sleep apnea, for instance, or weight bearing issues and things. And so therefore, definitely we need to be talking about weight loss, not for the sake of weight loss, but thinking about improving metabolic health. So, and even 5 to 10% weight loss in that kind of context makes a big difference in metabolic health. Obviously, there are studies that have been done in some adolescents, like Megan Dow's work from Sydney, and also a lot of work in adults showing that you can have remission of type 2 diabetes with weight loss. But obviously that I suppose I focus on improving metabolic health because I don't want people to feel like they've failed if their diabetes hasn't gone away, if that makes sense. That there's lots and lots of things impacting on someone's life, and I'm just trying to improve lots of aspects of their health. So their blood pressure, their cholesterol levels, if they've got sleep apnea, and looking at overall how we improve health rather than weight loss as the goal in itself, because I don't think that's the goal in itself. It's about how that might fit within the rest of their health.
Thanks, Angela. Liz, what's your experience with this?
Yeah, as Angela said, I don't directly talk about weight loss, especially in the beginning. It's more of a gradual thing, but in the beginning, I'll talk more about moving more, being more active, getting involved in, sports teams or whatever their interests are. You've got to find out what they like to do and work with them to try and increase their activity levels in any way that they identify that they could possibly do. So yeah, not such a big emphasis on weight loss, but more about me being more active and doing more exercise.
And Peggy, I guess I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think because when I had Angela as my pediatric doctor, she did not mention to me about having like any weight loss or anything, but she did say that I do need to manage to keep it stable, and I've been keeping it stable since forever. So I don't think it could be having stigma towards that. Towards because some people may be embarrassed to talk about their weight. They may not feel confident in their body. But either way, if they're really sorry, if they're very open and comfortable to talk to the health professional about losing weight, of course they're going to ask if they can see a dietitian, but that's completely up to them. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so a rather clinical question here. So have you had any experience using continuous glucose monitoring? Did you find this helped engage the clients? Let's say, Angela, I might pass it to you first.
Well, obviously not funded, so that is a bit of an issue. Where we have found it useful is in patients when they're first kind of diagnosed, if they come in for intense treatment and titration of insulin, we try to go up on insulin like very quickly and to be able to get the sugars in target before going home, so that, and in that sense, I found the monitoring helpful because a young person kind of clearly sees the difference with treatment very early. So they've seen, like, they came in with the sugars being in the 20s, and after a few days with their continued, they're like, oh, it's like 5 or 6. And that kind of reinforces, I suppose, a benefit of treatment, but it also shows the effect of different foods. So if they're kind of going off the wards and having soft drink, you have young people that may come back and go, oh, my sugar went up to this, and that kind of illustrates the sugar content of various things. And so in that way, it's helpful. But unfortunately, we don't have funding in an outpatient setting. And obviously in an inpatient setting, we're just using supplies that we have. Yeah, but Liz might have more thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Unfortunately, not funded for type 2 diabetes at this stage. Hopefully that will change in the future. But yeah, it can be extremely powerful, you know, just to see their level before eating particular food or drink, and then watching what happens without having to constantly prick their fingers can be very, very powerful. As Angela mentioned, when they're in hospital also, just looking at, even if they don't use CGM, just looking at their blood glucose chart, they can see when they came in, when they're admitted, it's, you know, it's however high. And then once they start their diabetes treatment, it will come right down, and it's really obvious because we graph ours on a paper chart still. So you can see that trend down really clearly, and that can be really powerful as well, equally as powerful as CGM. But CGM is fantastic and it's got its place, but it's not funded. So we kind of just use trial stock that we have or any donated stock that we have. But yeah, it's not obviously ongoing, sustainable.
And Peggy, can I check, have you ever had the chance to use CGM, or if you haven't, if you had that kind of information available that showed the constant trend in your blood sugar levels, do you think that would be helpful to talk about with your health professionals?
I think it would be very helpful. I've never actually tried it myself, but I'm saying that it could be very helpful in the future for young people with type 2 diabetes. I get that we're not funded for it. So yeah, I think it'd be better use in the future. So yeah.
I've got another question for you here, Peggy. Question here about, what do you think helps most with reducing shame?
I think it's more like reaching out to people that has been in that area before, like mainly just any young kids who's been through it has. I think it's better to reaching out to other people. It's just that sometimes it's nowadays people like Gen Y and Gen Z, they don't get, like, they don't really feel like talking to anyone about it. They just keep it under wrap, which is how I felt the first time when I was diagnosed. Like, in reducing the shame, I think it's more like reaching out to other people, reaching out to support groups as well. Like I've also like you can find them on Facebook or anywhere near you. So I think it's more like reaching out to reduce that stigma and talk to not only just to other people but talk to your family as well. They're the big part of your life that will stay forever, and obviously they'll help you through it no matter what you go through. So yeah.
Can I ask Peggy a follow-up question there about where did you find other young people who had type 2 who were going through a similar thing to you? Because that can be hard for people sometimes, I think.
So it was with the non-Indigenous mob. I was in middle school. I had to reach out to one of my doctors. So she had a daughter that was type 2 diabetes, and she set up a support group that we meet every Wednesday afternoon for like an hour, and we do activities and discuss what has diabetes done for us, what can we do to help shape future diabetes. I think, and we also had like it was more like it was a support group in a way, but we always called it the CAPS meeting. So I think either Liz or Angela remember. I think Dr. Uh, Dr. Evans, I think her name was Tilda Evans. I think she was one of the daughters that I was getting along with, and I also found out through that group that there was another person at my school with type 2 diabetes as well. There was two other people with type 2 diabetes that I managed to reach out. So yeah, and those support groups was amazing, and they helped me through schooling as well. So yeah.
That's amazing to hear. It sounds like it's a huge help to you. Can I ask Angela and Liz perhaps to comment? Are those still running, or what type of things do you do for young people who might be experiencing shame? I'll go to Angela first.
It's a huge issue that actually we're hoping that the project that's kind of developing new models of care across Northern Australia will actually really help with, because it's really, really big issues, that shame or stigma. There's obviously some local great projects happening, such as Worley's project, which you'll hear about later in the webinar series. And kind of what I find quite useful is when the young person first gets diagnosed, the first appointment, showing them one of the videos of another young person. And sometimes I actually young people sometimes get quite teary watching those videos, because it might be the first time they've actually seen another young person with type 2 diabetes talking. And that kind of helps, because I go to quite isolated areas where they might be the only young person in that community, or they don't necessarily they might not be able to go to a support group. So those kind of resources are really important in trying to connect young people.
And Liz?
Yeah, exactly the same. Just like in Emma's paper, highlighted peer groups, camps, things like that, where young people can come together and see and meet other people, learn how they're coping with it, how they're dealing with it, get tips off them, get advice. Yeah, just knowing all the facts as well really helps as well, and just to educate other people where they can too, for, when it is shame and people do tease them, you can't eat that, you can't have that, just educating them, giving them the tools to be able to educate other people.
So one thing I just add is we've tried, if there's a young person that's been recently diagnosed and we know that they need to start insulin, if we can, we try to bring them into Darwin at the same time as another young person, so that they could actually meet each other at that time and have kind of some education together. We found that been helpful. I still remember once there was a 15 or 16-year-old that was terrified of insulin and really, really didn't. We had a 12-year-old that was diagnosed, had been diagnosed a few days before, and she came in and showed the 15-year-old how to do her insulin, and that's the only reason that she started taking insulin. So it can really help to overcome some of that fear.
Thank you. That's it's so great to hear. I'm just mindful of time. We're having a great discussion there, and we're getting pretty close to time. There was some talk of showing this video and the case study. I think we go ahead with that. If people do need to leave, we've got 6 minutes left until we run to time. I think we live with that. Liz, did you want to show the video first and then perhaps do the case study?
Yeah, sure. Yep. The video is about 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes, and the case study should only take a few minutes.
Sure.
Okay. Can you see that?
I can. And yep, just remember you'll need to share it.
You got it?
Perfect.
I felt like I really needed to do something. I thought I would have got really sick and I didn't want that, so I just pushed it. Like when I first got diagnosed with it, like it was upsetting. But yeah, I just don't eat like sugar, like lollies or anything. I know how much to eat, like I don't, go back for more or anything.
What had the most effect on changing your mindset?
When I went back and I seen like that I almost had dialysis, that's what really got me desperate to lose weight and get healthy. So every time like I think of that, I go, like if my friends, they're doing anything, I just go run around with them and I get really healthy. Yeah, I have a lot of family that have diabetes and like dialysis. And I've seen like what they're doing on dialysis is like, and I'm like, I don't want to be like that. So it's like a nightmare. You're running away from it. So I just kept doing what I wanted to do. What I did, like, I was scared of it the first time, but then I got used to it, and then I just did that. It was like a routine, just like when you get up, have breakfast, go for showers, just like that. But every single day, I was doing it for about maybe a year, I think, and then I got better. Got off needles about term 2, I think, or term 3. I was really happy, and I just felt better. Julie is the school's like clinic nurse. I didn't really know her, but then I got used to her. She started helping me out a lot. She tells me what I need to do and stuff, like when I need to take my blood sugars. Like she helps me figure out days what to take it.
Yeah.
So at the moment I'm basically taking it every Wednesday, just to make sure my blood sugars are all good. I either ask my mom or I talk to Julie. They're the two people I talk to. When I came back for holidays, I went and seen Monica, and she was checking my blood, and if I kept the way I was back when I was in Berlin, I had dialysis, but it was really high, but then it dropped right down. And then I just kept losing weight and getting healthy here when I came back.
If you were to talk to a group of young people about how to manage their diabetes or how to look after themselves, what kind of things would you talk to them about?
If you gotta take your tablets every day and night, and then if you on needles, just keep taking it, then taking your tablets, and your sugars will go down. Keep exercising and running around and be active, and just keep doing that, and you'll feel better. Your sugars will go down, everything will be okay.
But I guess there's a lot of health professionals out there that are going, I don't know how to talk to young people, I don't know how to make them do what I want them to do. Do you have any advice for them?
You gotta make them feel welcome, comfort them, and just be calm around them, like just talk to them like really calm and gentle. Tell them that like if you take your tablets and all that, you know, you'll be like you get healthy again. That's what a lot of people told me, and that's what I did. When I first came here, I was like really nervous. I didn't know anybody except for like the mother and brother. And then I just started loosening up, and then I lost some weight, and then I just kept playing more sports. And then like I just feel like just it feels like all the bad stuff in my body has went away, and I'm just walking around and I feel good.
What's the dream?
To be a rapper. That's it, really.
That's great.